There are nights that forever change the way you see the world up there. This is one of those stories that only someone who has felt the weight of responsibility for 180 lives in their hands can fully understand. My name is Richard. I've been a captain for over 20 years, and what I'm about to tell you happened on a March morning that still makes me question everything I think I know about flying. You listening to this have probably flown as a passenger. You've looked out that little window and wondered what goes through the mind of whoever's up front, controlling that machine weighing hundreds of tons at 35,000 feet. Well, today I'm going to take you inside the cockpit in a way few have ever experienced. I'm going to show you that not everything up there has an explanation, and that sometimes the sky holds secrets that challenge all our technology and experience. What's at stake here isn't just the safety of one flight, but our understanding of what really happens in that space between Earth and stars. And what makes this story unique is that it connects the present with one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American aviation. It was a Tuesday, 2:37 a.m. Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport had that typical late-night vibe. Few flights, lots of silence, and an almost ghostly atmosphere in the empty terminals. I was commanding American Airlines Flight 1847, an Airbus A321 bound for Miami International Airport. 178 passengers aboard, most sleeping before we even took off, and an experienced crew that had flown with me dozens of times. My first officer that night was Henry, a 32-year-old guy, meticulous as they come, one of those who checks every checklist item 3 times. We'd flown together the previous month on the Denver-Phoenix route, and our cockpit synergy was perfect. The lead flight attendant was Marsha, a 15-year American Airlines veteran who knew every safety procedure like it was an extension of her own body. DFW Tower, American 1847, ready for departure, runway 18. Right, I spoke on the radio following standard protocol. The controller's voice came back clear and professional. American 1847, cleared for takeoff, runway 18 right, wind calm, visibility unlimited, contact Dallas departure on frequency 124.3 after takeoff. Cleared for takeoff, 18 right, 124.3 post-departure. American 1847, I confirmed, then told Henry, set takeoff thrust. The CFM56 engines roared with their characteristic power as we accelerated down the runway. V1, rotate. V2, Henry announced, and I pulled back gently on the stick. The A321 climbed smoothly into the dark Texas night, leaving behind the sea of lights from the city that never sleeps. Positive rate, gear up, I commanded, and Henry retracted the landing gear. Flaps 1, clean configuration, we continued with the after-takeoff checklist. Within minutes, we were established at FL 350, 35,000 feet, flying in the absolute darkness of the American sky. The flight plan was straightforward. Follow Airway J42 passing over Shreveport, then pick up J121 to Jacksonville, and finally J79 direct to Miami. Estimated flight time, 2 hours and 28 minutes. Excellent weather conditions, no turbulence forecast, clear skies, and unlimited visibility throughout the route. Atlanta Center, American 1847 established FL 350, I reported, entering Atlanta Center's airspace. American 1847, Atlanta Center, radar contact. Maintain FL 350, report reaching Wasky, came the response. Wasky was a fixed waypoint in the navigation system, approximately halfway between Dallas and Miami. We'd be flying over eastern Texas, then Louisiana, before finally beginning descent into Florida. Henry was checking weather conditions at Miami when something on the radar caught my attention. A small mark appeared on the screen, initially very faint, approximately 40 nautical miles ahead and slightly right of our route. Henry, you seeing this on the radar? I asked, pointing at the mark. He leaned over to observe the screen. Yeah, Captain. Looks like traffic, but it's showing no transponder ID. On air traffic control radar, every aircraft appears with specific information: altitude, speed, call sign, and squawk code, a 4-digit code that uniquely identifies each flight. That mark on our radar showed only a dot without any additional information. Atlanta Center, American 1847. We're observing unidentified traffic approximately 40 miles ahead. FL 350, no transponder. Do you confirm traffic in the area? There was a longer than normal pause before the response. American 1847, negative traffic identified at that position. Maintain course and altitude, report any changes. That was strange. American airspace is rigidly controlled, especially at high altitudes. Any aircraft flying above FL 245 must be in contact with control and have an operational transponder. There's no such thing as phantom traffic at 35,000 feet. "Captain," Henry said, "the traffic is getting closer. Now 30 miles and appears to be at our same altitude." I watched the screen carefully. The dot was indeed getting stronger, indicating it was approaching. But the strangest thing was its speed. It seemed to be flying at exactly our same speed, about 450 knots ground speed. Atlanta Center, American 1847, the unidentified traffic continues approaching, now 30 miles, same altitude, same apparent speed. Request vectoring to avoid conflict. American 1847, we still don't have that traffic identified on our scopes. Cleared to deviate 10 degrees left, maintain FL 350, report when traffic is abeam. I made the course correction, turning smoothly 10 degrees to the left. Henry continued monitoring the radar. "Captain, the traffic also altered course, still approaching on a collision heading." This was impossible. If it were a real aircraft, how could it have altered course at exactly the same moment we did, without being in contact with control? And if it wasn't real, why was it appearing on our weather radar? Atlanta Center, American 1847, urgent. Unidentified traffic altered course simultaneously with us. Maintains collision course. Request immediate descent to FL 330. The controller's voice now showed a tone of concern. American 1847, cleared immediate descent FL 330. Report established. I pushed the stick forward and reduced engine power. "Descending FL 330, I announced, and the A321 began descending smoothly. Henry monitored altitude while I watched the radar. The mysterious dot also began a descent. "This can't be happening," I muttered quietly, but loud enough for Henry to hear. "Captain, want me to wake up Marcia? Maybe we should prepare the cabin for an evasive maneuver," Henry suggested, his voice controlled but clearly concerned. "Not yet. Let's see what happens when we're established at the new altitude." American 1847 established FL 330. I reported to control. American 1847, roger. "Any visual on the traffic?" I looked out the cockpit window. Outside was absolute darkness. No moon, no visible stars due to a scattered layer of high clouds. "Negative visual, Atlanta Center. Radar still shows traffic approaching, now 15 miles. That's when something completely inexplicable happened. Henry was adjusting instruments when suddenly he looked at me with an expression of total bewilderment. "Captain, the traffic, it's gone." I immediately looked at the radar. The screen showed only our aircraft flying alone over the American interior. No other signals, no marks, as if nothing had ever been there. Atlanta Center, American 1847, the unidentified traffic has disappeared from our scope. We no longer have contact. American 1847 copied, cleared to resume FL 350 and original course to Woski. I looked at Henry. He looked back at me. We both knew we'd seen the same thing, but neither of us could explain what had happened. It wasn't a radar malfunction. We checked all systems, and they were functioning perfectly. It wasn't atmospheric interference. Weather conditions were ideal. And it certainly wasn't imagination. We both saw it, reported it, and took evasive action. "Let's keep this between us for now," I said. "I don't want to alarm the crew or passengers." We resumed cruise altitude and original course. The rest of the flight to Miami proceeded normally, but neither of us could stop thinking about what had happened. Throughout the entire route, we remained hyper-vigilant on the radar, but nothing else appeared. We landed in Miami at 5:18 a.m. on schedule. During post-flight procedures, Henry pulled me aside. "Captain, I've flown over 4,000 hours, and I've never seen anything like that. What do you think it was?" "I don't know, Henry. Honestly, I have no idea. We decided not to officially report the incident initially. After all, how do you explain something you can't understand? How do you talk about traffic that appeared from nowhere, followed us, responded to our movements, and then simply vanished? But the story doesn't end there. Actually, it was just beginning. 3 days later, I was home in Dallas when I received an unexpected call. It was Colonel Frank Martinez from the Air Force's Accident Investigation Unit. He wanted to speak with me personally about Flight American 1847. "What do you mean, Colonel?" "We didn't report any incident," I said, genuinely confused. "Captain Richard, we need to talk. Can I come to your house this afternoon?" At 3:30 p.m., Colonel Martinez was sitting in my living room. He was a man in his 50s, graying hair, penetrating gaze, and a seriousness that indicated many years dealing with complex situations. "Captain, we know about the unidentified traffic you encountered on Tuesday," he said, straight to the point. I felt a chill in my stomach. "How do you know?" "Air traffic control records all communications. When there are reports of unidentified traffic, especially at 35,000 feet, that automatically becomes a matter of national security." He opened a folder and pulled out some documents. "Captain, what I'm about to show you is classified. You can examine it, but you can't make copies or discuss it with third parties." The first document was a map of American airspace with several red markings. "In the last 5 years, we've received 23 reports similar to yours. Unidentified traffic, no transponder, appearing on aircraft radar but not on control radar, and demonstrating, let's say, unconventional behavior." My mind was racing. "Colonel, are you telling me this is more common than we think?" "Much more common, and there's something specific about your case." He turned the page and showed a black and white photo, clearly old. This photo was taken in 1986 over Texas airspace. The image clearly showed what appeared to be an aircraft, but with a shape I'd never seen. It didn't have the proportions of any commercial or military aircraft I knew. In March 1986, exactly 37 years before your incident, a Delta flight reported an encounter with unidentified traffic on the same route you were flying. Same altitude, same behavior. The pilot managed to take this photo. I felt a shiver. What happened to that flight? Nothing. They landed normally in Miami. But 3 days later, the captain received a visit from us exactly like you're receiving now. The colonel put away the documents. "Captain Richard, officially, none of this exists. There are no public records of these incidents. But unofficially, I've maintained a personal file for over 20 years. "Why?" I asked. "Because I believe pilots like you have the right to know you're not crazy, that what you saw is real, even though we can't explain it." He stood up to leave, but before going said something that marks me to this day. "Captain, in all this time investigating these cases, I learned one thing. The sky holds secrets that our technology still can't unravel. And maybe that's for the best." After he left, I spent hours thinking. 23 similar cases in 5 years. A photo from 1986 showing something impossible to explain, and the certainty that what Henry and I saw was just the tip of a much larger iceberg. In the following days, I began paying more attention to other pilots' reports. In informal conversations at airports, in professional WhatsApp groups, at company gatherings, and I discovered that stories like ours were more common than we imagined, always told in low tones, always with a request not to spread the word, always accompanied by a mixture of bewilderment and apprehension. Captain Carlos from United once told me about lights that followed his 737 for 200 nautical miles between Denver and Phoenix. Captain Ann from Southwest talked about an object that appeared on radar during a night flight to Las Vegas and suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds before disappearing. Each story was unique, but all had common elements: objects or signals on radar that shouldn't be there, behaviors that defied the laws of physics as we know them, and the sensation that we were being observed or tested by something we didn't understand. 3 months after my encounter with Colonel Martinez, I received a message from him. It was just an address and a time. Today, 8 p.m., come alone. The address was a deactivated hangar at Love Field in Dallas. When I arrived, I found not just Colonel Martinez, but 6 other pilots. Some I knew, others I'd never seen. Welcome to what we informally call the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Group, the Colonel said. All of you have had similar experiences. All of you deserve answers, even if limited. Over the next 2 hours, we heard accounts that went far beyond what I could imagine. Captain Jose from American told about an object that accompanied his A320 for 3 states, always maintaining the same relative distance, even during altitude and course changes. Captain Teresa from Delta reported instruments that failed simultaneously for exactly 90 seconds, during which her aircraft apparently flew under external control. The question everyone asks, Colonel Martinez said, is whether these phenomena represent any danger. Based on our investigation of over 20 years, the answer is no. There has never been an accident or serious incident related to these encounters. In fact, it seems that they, whoever or whatever they are, make a point of avoiding interference with flight safety. But what are they? Captain Jose asked. That's the 20-year question, the Colonel replied. Experimental aircraft from other countries? Atmospheric phenomena we don't yet understand? Classified military technology? Or something more exotic? We simply don't know. The meeting ended with a commitment. We would continue privately documenting these incidents, maintaining contact with each other, but without public disclosure. Society, according to the Colonel, wasn't yet ready for this reality. In the months that followed, my perspective on flying changed completely. It wasn't just about controlling a complex machine in a 3-dimensional environment anymore. It was about accepting that we share the sky with something we don't understand, but that apparently observes us, studies us, maybe even protects us. Henry and I flew together several times after that incident. We never saw anything similar again, but we developed a kind of ritual. On every night flight, we dedicated a few extra minutes to carefully observe the radar and sky around us. Not out of fear, but out of curiosity. Out of respect for something greater than ourselves. 6 months after the first incident, during a Dallas-Phoenix flight, something interesting happened. We were flying over New Mexico when I received an ACARS message, the aircraft's digital communication system that wasn't part of any standard protocol. The message simply said, "Thank you for your attention. Continue flying safely." I showed Henry, who remained silent for several minutes. Then he said, "Oh, Captain, I think we just received a message." "From whom?" I asked. "From whoever made that visit on our flight to Miami." I reported the message to Colonel Martinez, who just smiled and said, "Captain, it seems you made a good impression." To this day, more than a year later, I continue flying regularly. I've accumulated over 15,000 flight hours, visited dozens of countries, faced storms, equipment failures, medical emergencies, and all the situations a commercial pilot can imagine. But nothing changed my perception of aviation as much as those 30 minutes over the American interior, chasing a ghost on radar. Sometimes, on especially quiet night flights when passengers are sleeping and the cockpit is bathed only in the blue light of instruments, I look out the window at the vast darkness out there and wonder, are we really alone up here? The answer based on my experience and that of dozens of other pilots I've met, is a definitive no. We share the sky with something that prefers to remain anonymous, something that observes without interfering, something that maybe has been there much longer than we imagine. Colonel Martinez once told me, "Captain, the difference between a good pilot and an excellent pilot isn't just technical skill. It's the ability to accept that not everything in the sky can be explained by the manuals." He was right. Today, when new pilots ask me about strange experiences during flight, I don't dismiss their stories as imagination or fatigue. I listen carefully, ask detailed questions, and when appropriate, share my own experience. Because I believe that we pilots are the sentinels of the sky. We're the first to witness phenomena that challenge our understanding, and we have the responsibility to document, report, and discuss these experiences, even if discreetly. Commercial aviation transports billions of passengers annually with impressive safety records. But behind this efficiency and routine, there exists a world of mysteries that few know about. Objects on radar that shouldn't be there. Communications that come from nowhere. Lights that follow aircraft for hundreds of miles. And perhaps most impressive, the constant sensation that we're not alone up there, that something observes us, studies us, and occasionally reminds us of its presence. During one of our informal meetings, Captain Carlos made an observation that deeply marked me. Maybe they're not visitors, maybe they've always been here, and we're the intruders in their territory. It's an interesting perspective. We humans began flying just over a century ago. Whatever's up there may have been there much, much longer. Maybe our growing presence in airspace has caught their attention. Maybe they're simply curious about these metal machines that cut through the sky in straight lines, carrying hundreds of people from one place to another. Or maybe they have a specific mission, something we don't understand yet. The fact that they've never caused accidents or interfered with flight safety suggests that whoever they are, they have respect for human life. 3 weeks ago, I received an unexpected call from Captain Patricia from Delta. She was visibly shaken. "Richard, do you remember our conversation about those strange things we sometimes see?" "Of course, Patricia. What happened?" "I just returned from a Chicago-Atlanta flight. It was different from anything I've ever experienced. We arranged to meet at Dallas Love Field the next day." Patricia, a pilot with over 12 years of experience, had never seemed so disturbed. "Richard, it wasn't just a mark on radar. I saw it with my own eyes." She told me that during approach to Atlanta, around 11:30 p.m., 3 luminous objects appeared, forming a perfect triangle on the right side of the aircraft. They weren't position lights from other aircraft. They were too bright and had a blinking pattern she'd never seen. They accompanied us during the entire descent, always maintaining the same formation, always in the same relative position. When we started final approach, they simply disappeared. And Atlanta approach detected nothing. As always. Any passengers see it? 2 or 3 commented about strange lights, but the flight attendant said they were probably other aircraft. You know how it is. We always try to give reassuring explanations. Patricia was right. In situations like that, our first concern is always maintaining calm in the cabin. Passengers already have enough fear of flying. They don't need additional mysteries. But Patricia's story made me think about how many other people have seen similar things and simply accepted conventional explanations. How many passengers have looked out the window during night flights and seen something inexplicable, but didn't comment because they didn't know if anyone would believe them? Last month, during a flight to London, a first-class passenger approached me after landing. "Captain, can I ask a question that's going to sound strange?" She was a woman in her 60s, well-dressed, clearly an experienced traveler. "Of course, Mom. What concerns you?" During the flight, I saw some very strange lights out the window. They didn't look like other planes. Do you sometimes see things you can't explain?" The question caught me off guard. How to respond without sounding crazy or irresponsible. Ma'am, the sky sometimes shows us interesting things. Atmospheric phenomena, reflections, other aircraft at a distance. We can't always explain everything immediately. She looked at me with a knowing smile. Captain, I'm a retired physics professor. I know how to recognize atmospheric phenomena. What I saw today wasn't any of that. I didn't know what to answer. I just smiled and thanked her for sharing the observation. Cases like this make me question how many other people have had similar experiences and simply haven't found an appropriate environment to discuss them. How many other pilots prefer to remain silent for fear of professional judgment? How many air traffic controllers have seen strange signals on their radars but chose not to report them? Colonel Martinez once told me that the biggest obstacle to understanding these phenomena isn't the lack of evidence, but the lack of willingness to discuss them openly. Social and professional pressure to keep everything normal is stronger than scientific curiosity, were his words. And he was right. In a profession where precision, logic, and predictability are fundamental, admitting encounters with the inexplicable can be seen as a sign of instability or lack of reliability. That's why most pilots prefer to keep these episodes to themselves or share only with very close colleagues. But what bothers me isn't just the silence imposed by circumstances. It's the feeling that we're losing a unique learning opportunity. If these phenomena are real, and I'm certain they are, they could represent technological advances that would revolutionize our understanding of physics, propulsion, navigation, or communication. Imagine the implications. Aircraft that can alter course instantaneously without signs of acceleration. Objects that appear and disappear from radars without leaving traces. Stealth technologies that make objects invisible to certain types of detection but visible to others. If we could understand how these things work, civil aviation could make quantum leaps in efficiency and safety. We could develop more precise navigation systems, cleaner propulsion methods, more advanced communication technologies. But for that, we'd first need to admit these phenomena exist. And that, apparently, is the hardest step. During one of our meetings at the Love Field hangar, I suggested to Colonel Martinez that we should officially document these incidents. "Captain," he replied, "do you think society is ready to know that commercial pilots regularly encounter unidentified objects that demonstrate technology far beyond ours?" The question made me reflect. Maybe he was right. Maybe premature disclosure could cause panic, distrust in civil aviation, or religious or conspiratorial interpretations that would distort the facts. On the other hand, maintaining total secrecy also has its risks. How do you develop countermeasures or safety protocols for situations that officially don't exist? How do you train pilots to deal with encounters that can't be discussed openly? How do you improve our detection and navigation systems without admitting that objects fly in our airspace that our current technology can't adequately identify? It's a complex dilemma without easy solutions. What I can say, based on my personal experience and that of dozens of colleagues I've met over recent months, is that American skies, and probably worldwide, harbor phenomena that our current science can't completely explain. This doesn't mean we should resort to fantastic explanations or abandon the scientific method. On the contrary, it means we should keep our minds open to possibilities we haven't yet considered, continue carefully documenting these experiences, and await the appropriate moment for deeper study. Meanwhile, we continue flying, transporting millions of passengers safely, maintaining the highest professional standards, and occasionally serving as witnesses to mysteries that may one day be unraveled. Last week, I flew the Dallas-Miami route again, this time in a Boeing 737. Henry was with me again. Apparently our duo became a kind of informal, strange phenomena specialists within the company. Throughout the flight, we maintained extra attention on radar and conditions around us. Nothing abnormal happened. Just a quiet night flight over the American interior with passengers sleeping and crew executing routine procedures. But at the end of the flight, when we were beginning descent to Miami, Henry showed me something interesting on the flight computer. "Captain, look at this on the flight management system." The screen showed our flight route with all waypoints and time estimates. But there was something additional, a waypoint that wasn't in our original flight plan, a point marked as mystery, exactly at the position where we had our original encounter. "I didn't program that," Henry said. "And it's not in the system database." We checked with operations dispatch by radio. They confirmed there was no waypoint called Mystery in any aeronautical chart or official database. When we landed, we called the avionics technician to check the system. He analyzed for 2 hours and found no malfunction or unauthorized alteration. The waypoint was simply there, as if it had always been part of the system. "Maybe it's a software update you guys weren't notified about," the technician suggested, clearly without a convincing explanation. But Henry and I knew it wasn't that. It was another sign that something or someone was monitoring our flights, possibly keeping a record of encounters. I reported the incident to Colonel Martinez, who just smiled with his usual enigmatic manner. "Captain, it seems you've gained a special kind of attention. Is that good or bad?" I asked. Based on our 20-year experience, I'd say it's interesting. And it really is interesting. It's not scary, not threatening, but it's profoundly intriguing. The sensation of participating in something greater, something that connects our daily routine as commercial pilots with mysteries that could redefine our understanding of technology, physics, or even our position in the universe. 2 weeks ago, I received an unexpected proposal. An independent documentarian who had discovered our informal group through Air Force contacts wanted to make a film about unidentified aerial phenomena in America. He guaranteed total anonymity for all participants and a serious, scientific approach, far from sensationalism. "Captain Richard," he said during our meeting, "there are pilots worldwide reporting similar experiences. France, Chile, the UK. In some countries, like France and Chile, there are already official investigation programs. America has one of the largest civil aviation fleets in the world. It's impossible we're the exception." He was right. Researching online, I discovered that other countries already had official policies for investigating anomalous aerial phenomena. The French government has GIPAN, Study and Information Group on Unidentified Aerospace Phenomena. Chile has CEFAA, Committee for the Study of Anomalous Aerial Phenomena. Even the traditionally skeptical American government recently created AATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. "Why should America be different?" the documentarian continued. "You have one of the busiest airspaces in the world, first-class air traffic control technology, highly trained pilots. If anyone's going to detect these phenomena, it's you." The proposal was tempting, but also risky. Even with guaranteed anonymity, participating in a public documentary would mean taking a step beyond our private discussion circle. I consulted Colonel Martinez, who surprisingly favored the idea. "Captain, maybe it's time to start preparing the ground for more open discussion, always respecting national security protocols, of course." The documentary is still in production, but participating in it made me reflect on the responsibility we have as pilots. We are literally humanity's eyes and ears in the skies. When something unusual happens at 35,000 feet, we're usually the first, and sometimes the only ones, to witness it. This responsibility goes beyond simply flying from point A to point B safely. It includes documenting, reporting, and discussing phenomena that may have profound scientific, technological, or even philosophical implications. Last month, during an international flight to Paris, I had an interesting conversation with a French captain who was deadheading with us, traveling as a passenger to take another flight. "Mon ami," he said when he learned about my experiences, "in France, we have official protocol for this. When pilot sees something inexplicable, there's a specific number to call, a form to fill out, a formal investigation." "And does it work?" I asked. "Oui, it works very well. We've documented hundreds of cases. Some are explained as atmospheric or meteorological phenomena. Others remain mystère." He told me about a recent case where an Air France A320 encountered an object that accompanied the aircraft for over 100 nautical miles over the Mediterranean. The object was detected simultaneously by aircraft radar, French traffic control, and a military base. The official investigation lasted 6 months and concluded it wasn't any known phenomenon or identified aircraft. "And what happened after?" I asked. "Nothing," he laughed. "The report was filed, catalogued, and made available to researchers. C'est tout. There was no panic, no hysteria. People simply accepted that there are things in the sky we don't yet fully understand." That conversation made me realize how primitive our American approach still is. While other countries developed formal scientific protocols to deal with these phenomena, we're still at the stage of secret hangar meetings and whispered airport conversations. Maybe it's time to change that. At our informal group's last meeting, I proposed that we begin organizing our accounts more systematically, not for immediate public disclosure, but to create a solid archive that could eventually serve as the basis for official investigation. "Captain," Patricia said, "do you think we'll ever be able to discuss this openly without fear of professional judgment?" "I think it's not a question of if, but when," I replied. Aviation has evolved tremendously in the last 50 years. Our understanding of atmospheric phenomena, technology, physics has also evolved. Maybe it's natural that our approach to these mysteries should evolve too. Colonel Martinez, who was present, agreed. The world is changing. People are more open to discussions that were once taboo. Maybe the public is more prepared for this reality than we imagine. And maybe he's right. Recently, even traditional media outlets began seriously covering reports of unidentified aerial phenomena. Respectable documentaries were produced. Renowned scientists began advocating for more rigorous investigations. The stigma still exists, but it's diminishing. Yesterday, during a Dallas-Houston flight, something made me smile. A kid about 8 years old, sitting near the cockpit, approached me during boarding. "Mr. Pilot, have you ever seen a UFO?" The question caught me completely off guard. How to answer a child honestly without creating fantasies or fears. "Why do you ask that?" I replied. "Because my dad said pilots see strange things sometimes, but they can't tell." I looked at the child's father, who smiled embarrassedly. He was clearly an educated adult, probably with a profession requiring critical thinking. "My son is very curious about aviation," he explained, "and lately he's been asking lots of questions about unexplained things." I decided to be honest but careful. "Look," I told the child, "we pilots see lots of interesting things up there. Sometimes they're other planes, sometimes they're nature phenomena, sometimes they're things we're still trying to understand. The important thing is always keeping everyone aboard safe." "But have you ever seen something you couldn't explain?" the boy insisted. "Yes, I have. And you know what I do when that happens. I watch carefully, write everything down in detail, and then talk with other pilots to see if they've seen anything similar." "And do you figure out what it is?" "Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But the cool thing is always staying curious and always wanting to learn more." The boy was satisfied with the answer and spent the rest of the flight asking technical questions about aviation. But the conversation marked me because it showed how new generations might be more open to these topics. than we imagine. Maybe when that child grows up, discussions about unidentified aerial phenomena will be as normal as discussions about turbulence or weather conditions. Maybe the current taboo is just a reflection of an era when our technology and knowledge were still too limited to approach these mysteries scientifically. Today, completing almost 2 years since my first encounter with the inexplicable, I can say my perspective on aviation has been completely transformed, not just about technical or operational aspects, but about the deeper meaning of flight. We are explorers, even if we don't realize it. Every commercial flight is an expedition through an environment that, despite all our technology and knowledge, still holds deep secrets. We share the sky with phenomena that our current science can't completely explain. And maybe that's extraordinary instead of worrying. Maybe it indicates there are still frontiers to explore, mysteries to unravel, discoveries to make. In a world where sometimes it seems we know everything, it's stimulating to discover there's still much to learn. For you listening to this story, maybe a pilot, maybe a passenger, maybe just someone interested in aviation, I leave some reflections. Next time you're flying, especially at night, take a few minutes to look out the window. Observe the sky around you carefully. Pay attention to lights moving differently, formations that don't seem to follow conventional routes, objects that appear and disappear quickly. I'm not suggesting you'll necessarily see something inexplicable. The probability is low. But I am suggesting you keep your mind open to the possibility that the sky we routinely traverse might be more complex and mysterious than we imagine. And if you're a pilot, I encourage you to talk openly with colleagues about strange experiences. You might discover you're not alone. You might discover that others have also had encounters they prefer not to discuss publicly. You might discover there's an informal network of pilots who document and investigate these phenomena responsibly and scientifically. The important thing is not letting fear of judgment prevent us from exploring these mysteries. Aviation has always been an area of pioneers, people willing to challenge the impossible and expand the frontiers of human knowledge. These unidentified aerial phenomena could represent aviation's next great frontier. So next time you look at the sky and wonder if we're alone up there, remember this story. Remember that there are pilots worldwide who can answer with certainty, we're definitely not alone. What does that mean exactly? We don't know yet, but we're finding out, one flight at a time, one observation at a time, one story at a time. And while we don't have all the answers, we continue doing what we do best. Flying safely, transporting people through the skies, and occasionally serving as witnesses to mysteries that may one day revolutionize our understanding of the world above the clouds. After all, there will always be more questions in the sky than answers on the ground. And maybe that's exactly how it should be. If you enjoyed this true story from American skies, subscribe to Black Box so you don't miss the next account that will make you question everything you think you know about what really happens up there. Leave in the comments if you've ever had a strange experience during a flight, and share this episode with someone who needs to know that the sky holds secrets much greater than we imagine.